All right, welcome to the Team Prosperity Wednesday team training. Today, what we're going to be discussing is some things that will hopefully have an immediate impact on your business that you can take, coming off this presentation, the webinar live or the recorded presentation, and insert this into your business for immediate impacts. It is April 14th. We're well into this year. We'll be at the halfway point of the year before we know it. So we want to continue to push on our goals. And remember, if we're not making our goals, one of the first instincts is to take that number down, ratchet it down so we have a shot of making it. That's the wrong thing to do. Keep your goals intact and just push as hard as you can. One of the things that we've been talking about with partners this week on an individual basis is that, those goals that we set for ourselves down the line, we have to believe 100% that those are going to come true, because if they don't, then what typically happens is that starts to come out in our language and how we market and what we say, how we say it, and it has a negative impact on a lot of the upfront conversion. On the other side of that, as we start to believe, it creates a confidence effect. And just like on the opposite side, if we don't believe, that's going to have a negative impact. This is going to have a huge positive impact, because people are going to be drawn to other people they think that can help them reach their goals. So the confidence effect is a multiplier in your business on the upfront conversion that is not something that we can really track in terms of numbers, but it's something that has a definite immediate impact in that conversion. So last week we talked a little bit about, what's in your business toolbox, some basic digital tools that help you, understanding your tools of organization, which is really important, approaching all markets effectively, the concentration on social media in terms of Facebook and LinkedIn, and then having a multi-touch follow-up system is a must-have tool in that toolbox. One of the things that we have to make sure that we understand for ourselves and our partners is we're in a bull market in financial services. There is no denying that. It is a huge industry under huge disruption, and there is such a need for what we do in the marketplace right now that you want to make sure you're spending time with the people who deserve it, people that want to help themselves, whether that's a client or a partner, and move on from the other ones as quickly as possible. Paradigm shift. A lot of us, when we were growing up, money wasn't talked about in the house. I didn't know how much my parents made. I didn't know if we owned a house, stocks, anything like that. That type of mindset where it was a taboo subject that nobody talked about is changing. There is a paradigm shift in the way people are starting to look at money, and they realize that they don't know how money works. They don't know the rules of the game, and they're losing because of that. And so what we do in the marketplace for clients and the business opportunity that creates for partners is just a huge opportunity for us. Movement is the key to learning. When somebody comes in as a new partner, they typically sometimes want to know everything before they get started. And that's just a way that we trick ourselves into procrastination. Same thing on the client side. They've got to move. Once the mindset's been opened up and we've got some new ideas and we've got some new ways to approach, the education has to lead to movement. If it doesn't, then we're just stuck in the same place in neutral that we always are. Our activity every single week is a ping pong back and forth match between business activity, things that are in our CRM, on our calendar, etc., versus the marketing activities, which is the activities, networking, prospecting that lead to business activity. So we have to have both. Both are very important. Understand what each means and, for your business and on a day-to-day basis, what you have to get done on either side in order to keep this thing going. Income producing activities. There are a lot of things we can do for our business, personal branding, content, articles, all of these things. And they are important to the long-term viability of your business, making you that person of, that's trustworthy, that builds the rapport, credibility online. That's all something that we work on continuously, but that doesn't have an immediate impact on your business. So what you have to do is divide your task up every day and understand some of it has an immediate value that I need to concentrate on. Those are called income producing activities. Those lead to revenue and income. If you don't have those and enough of those on the calendar, income is going to suffer. When you have enough income producing activities going on in your business, it creates momentum. And that momentum, you build on that momentum. So surround yourself with like-minded people. Success is a group activity. And then understand that what I'm doing day in, day out, building that consistency builds the momentum, and that activity starts to compound on top of each other. One of the things that also came up this week, don't force pieces that don't fit. This is a waste of your time, our time, the company's time, the prospect's time. Everybody's wasting their time here simply because you didn't follow some type of a filter or an organizational upfront structure that allows you to let in the right type of clients and the right type of partners. This is basically on the partner side what that looks like. If somebody's so busy with doing something that you know is wrong, that's inefficient, that's not going to last in the marketplace, but they're so busy doing that, they don't have time to listen to you with a real solution, you need to move on from those people very, very quickly. Our job, remember, is not to rebuttal, complain, or explain, convince. It's to find the right pieces, put them in the right places. So we're going to get back to some basics today. And that's really, for new partners coming in, it's very important because we've got a lot of information that comes at them at one time. It can be overwhelming, but then they have a lot of help with the assembly line. So we just want to, take it back to basics, talk about some things that can help our business going forward. One of the things that we have to understand is we have to remove the fear. Fear is standing in our way of the income goals, of the lifestyle goals, whatever the goal is that you have. Fear is standing in the way. It does not want you to become successful. So what could you do if fear was removed? Your brain's going to respond to this, whether you go in one way or the other. Brain loves habit, routine. It'll continue to want to do the same thing. So if you set it up correctly, it's just going to respond to this mentality. And once you remove fear from, the day-to-day activity, the business planning, everything that you have, great things start to happen. But if we get, backed into that corner by fear, it's going to have huge negative consequences on our business. Another thing that we can really do and implement for our new partners, as well as ourselves, is just have a plan. Follow the plan, and you'll be surprised how successful you can actually be. Most people, and you guys know this from talking to people, they don't have a plan. That's why it's easy to beat most folks. Most, for example, salespeople, 48% of the salespeople, they never make a follow-up call. So you're going to beat people just by having a plan of action. And having a plan of action helps you remove fear because you're now dialed into that plan of action where it's not emotion that's ruling you, it's a structured plan. And what that's also going to allow you to do is stop procrastinating. So procrastination comes in a lot of forms in a lot of different ways, and we invite it in different ways. But ultimately, you solve procrastination, once again, with a plan of action that you follow day in, day out. So today I will, and you need to get that stuff done. So what is a plan? Well, they have to be certain and specific. Having something meaningful going on day to day for your life and your business is very, very important. So if you go into the day and there's not a whole lot going on, fill up that day, especially as a new person. You're not going to have a lot of concrete, calendar events yet. So you fill it up with just day-to-day activity. What, when, why, but make sure it's certain and specific. Okay, let's continue to go. Another thing that's come up is, if, for example, let's just take LinkedIn. If you don't check LinkedIn for 4 or 5 days and you go in there and you got all these messages and notifications, it's going to become a chore. If you just check in 15 minutes a day, it's very, very easy to do a lot of the things that we do. You guys make it, and we make it hard on ourselves by not following, the necessary tasks that we need to do. So establishing a rhythm of activity, a plan of action is going to overcome a lot of the things and the problems and the obstacles that we see in the business. When we let those menial daily tasks pile up, then we become overwhelmed and we just shut down. If you stay on top of the schedule, this is really not that hard. Remember also, when we're going back to basics, virtual, we have huge advantages, but there's also a few disadvantages there. And virtual does not mean chaotic. Virtual means that we're doing business in a more efficient way. That means still people have to respect your time. They have to be there. So it's no different in terms of the business communication, the business etiquette. It just means that we're doing business in a virtual space versus traditional brick and mortar. But once again, that means there's got to be structure and organization. Doesn't invite chaos into the organization. Also, you got to upgrade your network. So remember, if you're talking to people and you're saying, oh, this person can't afford it, this person's, whatever the reason is, one of the ways that you overcome some of that is you learn to upgrade your network. If you talk to a better echelon of people on the partner or the client side, what you'll realize is that both sides of the business tend to open up, gain velocity. Two sides of the business. And once we start to organize ourselves that way, we start to understand and hopefully have a plan of action for both sides. It's a A-B kind of scenario. A is client, B is partner, where they fit in, or C, they fit in nowhere, and we just wish them the best of luck going forward. Remember, with the two sides of the business, it doesn't matter client or partner, it's all about relationships. If do you sell or do you serve? Because if you're building relationships, then the money should follow. The organizational growth, revenue, and income, they should all follow. If you're out there actively building relationships and trying to help people, solve problems, things will work out for you. And you start to get into the mind of building a relationship by understanding that you're an educator. We're not out there selling a product. We're not out there recruiting people on the front end. We're educating. And it becomes a lot easier to build those relationships when you understand what you're doing. You're an educator, whether it's clients or business partners. Your effectiveness as an educator comes from your commitment, dedication, excellence, and compassion. So once again, if I have to go out there and sell somebody something, that's a whole different conversation from going out there and educating them, open their mindsets, and leading them to a better, in this case, financial life. And that allows us to prospect with a purpose. So if we're, building relationships out there, we're an educator, we need to form a game plan that leads to what we call a yes formula. And that partly is going to be whoever is most confident on the phone, on the Zoom, whatever it might be. Could be you, could be the prospect. It needs to be you. You have to, and you need to learn how to close the prospect or close before you actually prospect. A yes formula does not mean that we're trying to cram people into clients and partners that shouldn't be there. A yes formula just means that we're trying to get as many eyes on our assets as possible. How many videos can we watch? How many people can we get on the landing page? How many people can we get, through whatever means that we're trying to market? We're developing a yes formula so people know that we're in business, what we do, and then we'll take the conversation from there. You get what you negotiate. And so it's very, very important that you understand that yes formula comes from a negotiation. If I can, will you? Now, you doesn't want to be salesy. It doesn't want to, you want to separate yourself and come back to that education mindset, but you develop a yes formula by negotiating people. Hey, if I can show you a way to do this, this, or this, you want to do this, talk to me about it. That's all it is. You're taking into the marketplace either known problems, perceived problems, or problems that they give you. You're offering a solution, and that negotiation is the next action step. Well, I can do this for you. Will you do this? You negotiate the yes formula on the front end. And also in the negotiation, there's two main points that I really think are important. Number one is the power of possibility. What can happen in somebody's life? And then secondarily is the fear of missing out. And the fear of missing out, along with the power of possibility, very, very strong emotional factors that can propel somebody to take that next action step. Client or partner, it doesn't matter. A lot of people want things. Those are called a wish. A goal without a plan, that's exactly what it is. It's a wish. And what you find out is that when you talk to enough people, everybody wants stuff. Very few actually have a plan in place. And that's where we come in. Yes, we have education, but we take that education, we implement that into their lives and help them with a plan of action that's going to get them to a life they actually want versus just whatever comes down the pipeline from having no plan of action in place. You got to set the ground rules. And this is very, very important because if you're coming from an education perspective that gives you a power position, you need to set ground rules in communication. Set the purpose, allocate a time frame, agree on the outcome, summarize the next actions. If you learn to frame conversations and set down ground rules, your conversations are going to go a lot easier because you're going to be spending time with people who are actually falling into that and agreeing versus filtering out the people early on that can't, want, whatever the reason. So if you have a new partner coming in and they ask you this question, hey, how do I position my product to sell to my ideal customer? as a leader, as a manager, how do you respond back to that? What do you tell that new partner? Well, it's very, very important that you learn how to manage people by getting to know a little bit about them and what they want, and then leading them back to some type of a blueprint or game plan to do exactly that. So how do I position myself or my product to sell to my ideal customer? First of all, who is your ideal customer? Remember, if we're going to sell something to sell somebody, we need to know A, what we're selling, and B, who we're trying to sell it to. So who is that persona, whether it's a client or partner? Who is it that I'm going after? Who is it that I'm talking to, and why? Who is your audience? So if I'm looking for that ideal client, ideal partner, what type of an audience are they in? What are the demographics of that? Do I have a persona built where I'm trying to identify that ideal client or partner, and then taking that into the audiences where I think they would most likely be found? Once we identify the audience, we have to know that target audience very, very, very well. This is one of the most important points outside of the presentation that we have to nail, because if I'm getting in front of you as whatever, XYZ on the client or partner side, I need to know you and almost know you better than you know yourself, because my job, like I said, on the front end is to negotiate. And now if I can negotiate by knowing you, putting myself in your shoes and offering you a solution to a problem that I think or pretty much know that you have, that's about knowing your target audience. And once you start to know, you can start to market a lot better. What motivates your audience? Avoiding pain is often a stronger motivating factor, but it's always the carrot versus the stick. So when we're in the process of finding that ideal client, finding the audience that we think they're in, now we have to look, like we were just talking about, for the pain points that we can actually solve. This is the pyramid that I live by. And I think we've been looking at this for a long time. But in the marketplace, you got to build rapport, trust, and credibility, whether you do that online, whether you do that in person, talking to them the first few minutes. You are going to need to nail that, because after this, people start talking. That's all you got to do. Ask some questions after this has been accomplished. That information uncovers a problem that you probably have a solution for. Once the solution has been introduced and recognized, we got an action step that we can lead them to. This pyramid or this triangle, if your partners can master this, marketing becomes very, very easy. Remember, when you're talking to people from the other side, there's an element of trust there, and that's an element of risk for people. And also, every choice has its consequences. So A, we want to build that rapport, trust, and credibility, knowing how many people are pitching, selling, advertising to them every day. And then realize that every choice has consequences. This is important on the upfront marketing as well as the backside presentation. What's your message to your audience, that ideal client? Once we find that person and we identify audiences that we know or think they're in, what's your message? And your message has got to be something short, clear, concise, to the point, that gets a percentage of that audience that hopefully has our ideal client or partner to raise their hand and say, yes, I want more information. Yes, I want to talk about this. And then finally, you got to get your message out. If you find your ideal partner or client, got that persona, you're finding the audience, but you stay mute and no one knows you're in business, no one knows what you do, there's not much that's going to get accomplished from silence. Once we do that, we have the alignment and engagement. We have the alignment of who we're trying to talk to, and now we've got the engagement of some people starting to raise their hand, and that is a sweet spot to be in, because the last part of this is just really identifying the right people and nailing that presentation, whether it's you or whether you're passing that role off to somebody. Once we get down to the presentation, it becomes very important to nail that. And that's why we try to provide a customer or client experience that's second to none. That's why we lead with education. We don't really require much. Just show up to talk to somebody and learn about how to improve your life. So that customer experience, that client experience is something that we continue to work on. Inside, we always have to ask questions. Just on the upfront just like in the upfront marketing, we're asking questions. Inside that presentation point, we're asking questions, because questions, once again, uncovers information, problem, solution, action step. I talked about this, a little bit, but this is where either you're passing the role off to somebody or you're continuing the role yourself. Once you've actually identified an ideal client or partner, you've identified the audience, you've got a message out, you're getting that message out. Now is the time where you've actually, it's either you or somebody else, the presentation has to be on point. And this is where the culmination of everything you're trying to do comes down and meets at a point. Presentation has to be, near perfect. And through that presentation, we have to understand value, not from our side, but the client has to understand value. Is what we're saying, is what we're presenting, being recognized as value to the other side? If so, you're on good footing. And then now you can take that conversation and now you can start asking people to do things, whether it's to fill out data worksheets, whatever it might be, because now you've connected it, you've given them a reason, they've recognized the value, and both of you are under the same understanding. Every once, or actually most of the time, guys, a lot of these people on the client side or the partner side that you're talking to, it's time to take a stand. So, if they want to continue to live in the problem, that's fine. There's nothing I can do for them. Good luck with that. But at some point in the presentation, it's time to take a stand. You've been educated on the client and the partner side. You understand what we can offer. It's time to take a stand. It's time to make a commitment. It's time to make a decision. And you have to ask for that. What's the next step? Well, hopefully you're leading people to the next step, because if you're not leading people, then guess what? From a visual standpoint, you guys are just wandering around in the forest, not really knowing where to go, why to go, how you're even there, or why. So the next step always has to be laid out by you and in a concrete way that they understand exactly what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and what's expected of them. If not, this is what it looks like. Your job is to lead people to an endpoint. If you're not leading them to an endpoint, or you're giving them so many different kinds of endpoints that they're confused, then it doesn't work out. And what happens is confusion leads to people just shutting down, and they don't make appointments. They won't ask questions because you haven't led them to a point in a way that they feel comfortable continuing to deal with you. On the partner side, the easiest way that I can explain it to you guys is you've got a vision of what you want out of this company for yourself, for your team, etc. You are out in the marketplace trying to sell that vision to other people that are ultimately going to come in and help take that vision and make it a reality, along with their own personal organizational goals, etc. So on the partner side, I'm looking for people that buy into my vision, want to be a part of making it happen. Power of network marketing. One of the things that network marketing does, and we do have some elements of network marketing in this company because it's very, there's basically no barriers to entry. You don't have to have large amounts of infrastructure or capital. And basically what that means for us is that we can bring people in and we can have entrepreneurial development. And that's very, very important, because one of the worst things about being an entrepreneur and making that jump is if, all of a sudden the salary or the wages have dried up and you've got business expenses. That's a lot to weigh on somebody. So what we allow people to do is stick your foot in the water, come in, get inundated with our company, our culture, our process. We'll do a lot of the building for you. You have a limited role, you nail that. We'll build a business that you can walk into at the appropriate time. Also, when you're talking to people, if they're buying into your vision, but maybe they're making the jump on that cash flow quadrant, you've got to become comfortable with that conversation and know how to demonstrate value to the people that you speak with. If they're not an entrepreneur, but they're making or taking that jump, it's going to be scary. Understand where they're coming from, be empathetic, but also be strong in your conviction of what this can possibly do for them in terms of the types of freedoms that they can get. Also, when people are looking at a potential business, one of the things I always look at is, well, what is the point of resistance for scalability? When you examine that for our business, the human element, the personnel that we bring in, that's really going to be our responsibility. If we can do that, this thing can run wild. And it's important because we get big by staying simplistic. And when you look at this business, it's very important that people understand the difference between growing and scaling. Growing means that you're adding resources at the same rate you're adding revenue. On the other hand, scaling is about adding revenue at an exponential rate while only adding very minimal resources at an incremental rate. So the ability to scale a business without having to come and ask you for $250,000 or some other thing to get this started on West Coast operations, East Coast operations, whatever it might be, is big. Also, learn to pivot. And this is a very important thing that we all have to learn to do, because if we're not asking, the answer is always no. Let me give you an example. If you're talking to a potential partner and something comes up where they don't have the time or whatever the factor is, but it would be a good client conversation, then pivot. Don't just pause and kill the conversation. If you, let's say that you get a 10% yes rate. So on all the pivots that you ask, you get a 10% pivot rate, meaning that, yeah, they're going to agree to go through some client education, talk to an educator, etc. Well, 10%, is a low number, but it's okay. And it's a lot better than zero. In order to get to that 10%, you got to continue to ask it 100% of the time. So it's very, very important. 10%, like we talked about last week on a front-end conversion, change may not seem like a lot, but when you look at what a small front-end conversion change can do to back-end sales, it can be pretty explosive. So we're going to need to make a big impact. That's what we're trying to do. You're going to need some courage, and you're going to need some resolve. You're going to need some grit. You're going to need to get rid of the fear factors that you're holding on to. This is an opportunity to make a ton of money and also make a big impact on American consumers. You've got to go on the offense. Too many of us, too many times, we play defense. We're playing not to lose. You got to play to win. You got to go out there and grab this, guys. Because remember, money doesn't sleep. That's what we teach our clients. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 a year, but it does get bored. It gets bored mostly when innovation creeps in. And in this industry, innovation has creeped in. Digital disruption is here like every other industry. So the money is bored. It's moving around. It usually is attracted to smart technology. You got to invest in yourself. That doesn't mean necessarily money on the front end. It means that you got to learn new skill sets, that you've got to develop yourself, that you've got to try new things, fail, learn from those. Investment does not always mean capital money. It can be time, a lot of times in the beginning, that is going to be the combination. Put in the time to educate yourself, to get past the learning curve and become a better marketer, manager, educator, whatever we're trying to do. There's some things that we can do day in, day out. One of those is work hard. Another one is be accountable. We always talk about those two things. 3 is stay positive. Don't, let other people bring you down, which leads to number 4, ignore the haters. Always keep and revisit your vision, which should really be strong enough to propel you to do what you need to do. We're coming up pretty soon, next, 60 days on the halfway mark on the year, like we talked about at the beginning. We've got to get serious about the rest of this year, as well as the opportunity. This is a chance to do something special on a very large scale, but it's not going to get there unless you do the necessary steps in the beginning to form the foundations to lay this out. So next week, we'll continue to go through some more things that will help your business. If you guys or your partners have any things that you want specifically discussed or trained on these meetings, please let us know.